Hey, I'm Phil, and there are some sayings used by the most popular Daggerheart GMs on the internet that keep their games fun, engaging, and running smoothly. And while you don't have to use these sayings in the exact same way, just using a variant of them or just taking the idea behind them will make your games more memorable and keep your players coming back for more. So let's start with phrase number 1. Matt Mercer's phrase, "Let's find out."
Let's find out.
In this episode of Age of Umbra, a player asked Matt if there was anywhere around they could shelter for the night, and Matt said, "Let's find out." Then asked the players to roll an instinct check. He also allowed this to happen with advantage because, let the players find what they want, right? But he still very much left the environment up to the dice. But I think this phrase is much more powerful than that because I think it embodies the GM's ability in Daggerheart to truly sit back and watch the story unfold with the players. It also pulls away from the player versus GM mentality and moves more into the player versus dice realm that I just love. The second phrase in this video is also used by Matt a ton in Age of Umbra, mark a stress. Now this is so powerful because if you're ever unsure about a rolling with fear consequence, you can just come up with a reason the PC may be negatively affected and ask them to mark a stress. In my last Let's Find Out example, the player succeeded with fear, finding shelter, but because of the fear, they needed a consequence and Matt decided they would mark a stress, so came up with the idea that there is a corpse in the building and it freaks out the PC. Now this phrase comes with a kind of caveat for me, because I think it's a great phrase, because the GM can always fall back on it if they cannot think of anything to do with a roll with fear, just hand out stress. It is a very useful emergency card to pull, but I do think it should be an emergency card. I'm a believer that rolls with fear should affect the narrative in some way, not just be a way to wear down a player's resource. Now, Age of Umbra was Matt's big first time GMing an actual play series with this system, and he admitted himself afterward that they were still getting used to it. But I think the mark a stress phrase has two uses. One is a safety net for GMs to pull out when needed, and the other is a reminder to not use it if possible. Try thinking outside the box, try affecting the story. So next time you're about to say, mark a stress after a fear roll, think, wait, is there truly no other consequence I can add here? Also, your players would just never roll when they were high in stress because they know there's like a 50-50 chance they'll get another one. The next phrase is from Mark Hulmes. What does the card say?
What does the card say?
And this is one of my favourite things to say because I get to be like Alex Horn from Taskmaster saying all the information is on the task.
All the information's on the task.
The great thing about Daggerheart is that all the abilities and spells a player can do have been distilled down to their simplest form to fit on one card. There's no paragraphs upon paragraphs of text here. So when a player asks how an ability works, or can they do this, or does it work like this, saying what does the card say, or in my case, all the information should be on the card, gets them to double check it and understand more of how their character works. Then over time, if they have any questions, they'll double check the card first, and 90% of the time, that will answer the questions for them. Of course, still help your players if they're confused about anything, and don't make it feel like they can't ask questions. This is more just for mechanical ability questions. All of the questions on Discord about the game should be encouraged, but any questions where the answer is literally on the card in front of them, train them to read. Okay, on to Jacob Buds, whose phrase is quite simply, what do you do?
What do you do?
Like a lot in this list, this can be attributed to many TTRPGs out there, but I wanted to mix it with another phrase. You have the spotlight. What do you do? And you have the spotlight accomplish the same thing. The ball is in the player's court. They need to do something. And this can obviously be used at any point the GM is done describing an environment or scene, but in Daggerheart it's also similar to D&D's roll for initiative phrase. But unlike roll for initiative, you have the spotlight, or what do you do, throws the players right into the action. There's no rolling or weird stuff with initiative here. And these phrases are more than just an indication that the ball is in the player's court. It's also a fantastic mechanism to show the flow in combat. The idea of the spotlight in general is just incredibly powerful. A spotlight that moves around the table depending on who is taking an action, and it immediately flicks to the GM after a player rolls with fear or fails a check. So a great phrase that goes directly with what do you do, or you have the spotlight, is that brings the spotlight back to me. In fact, talking about the spotlight in general in games will help the flow of everything, in combat and out. Next up is Mariana Berrin's phrase, which is simply, are you?
Where are you right now getting ready before you go to this party? Are you training? Are you at home?
And this is just something I noticed watching her campaign frame actual play Gilded Knights. It's great, by the way, go check it out. But the phrase is great for bringing players who are not used to role-playing or improvising out of their shell. Mayana will ask a question such as, how do you do this? Then follow up with gentle nudges like, do you do it like this? Or maybe like this. For more experienced players, this may be annoying, like the GM is trying to lead the witness into doing something the GM wants them to do. But for new players, giving multiple choice potential answers to a question you just asked can give them some ideas of what to do next, and help manage that overwhelming existential dread that they can do anything in this game. Oh, and what do you do now? Are you just going to keep watching the video? Are you going to hit the like button? Do you hit the subscribe button? What are you feeling? Okay, on to Kevin Parr and his phase, what does this look like?
So what does this ritual look like?
Obviously, all these phases are used by many GMs across many games. I'm not saying anyone is coining these phases, and I'm just saying that because in a previous video, like this, I said Matthew Mercer says, how do you want to do this? And you can certainly try, and I got a plethora of angry comments saying Matt did not create those phases. I know, but a phrase I've heard Kevin say a lot is, what does this look like? Most useful for something like when a player uses a magic spell for the first time. I have a player in my home game playing a Galapa, and I asked him what it looked like when he attacks with the spell, and he took a moment and said he fires spinning shells, like a Mario Kart attack. And now all his spells have this shell flavouring, and it's made every time he attacks way easier to imagine and immerses the whole table more. And it's something that player may never have shared or even thought about without the GM asking, what does it look like? And in Daggerheart, what does this look like is not just useful for visualizing what the players are doing and how they're doing it, but also you can ask the players, what does a room look like? What does a town look like? There's a treasure chest in this room and you open it. What does the item inside look like? The phrase opens up the narration to the players and allows them to tell a story with the GM. And I think it's incredibly fun and something that makes Daggerheart play differently from other TTRPGs like D&D. Okay, on to Jeremy Cobb from the City of the Black Rose actual play. His phrase is, with that fear roll, I do this.
And with that fear roll,
this is an obvious one, but I think this phrase is going to become synonymous with Daggerheart GMs. When a player rolls with fear or misses in combat, the GM gets the spotlight to add a consequence to the game. That could be to have an adversary make an action or have something in the environment change, or as we spoke about earlier, simply coming up with a reason why the player takes a stress, but don't do that often. But by using the phrase, with that fear, I do this, or with that fear, this happens, it reminds the players that this is not just the GM being a jerk. This is a direct consequence from their role, and it's a mechanic within the game, and they're playing the game correctly. It's how things should be going. Speaking of consequences to rolls, if I roll with hope here, you need to consider checking out my Patreon, link in the description. Not only does it guarantee more Daggerheart content like this, but it will get you access to my homebrew Daggerheart content, such as these cool environments I cooked up. Look, this one has an event for a door, perfect for when your players need to get past a normal, standard door. Okay, let's see which got higher, hope or fear. Oh, okay, well, forget it then. Brennan Mulligan, and this is not from a Daggerheart actual play, but from the D&D Cloudword Ho actual play on Dimension 20. But I think it fits so well with Daggerheart play that I thought I would throw it in here. Do you want to have? Brennan uses his phrase when one of his players asks if they brought some NPCs with them, from the last scene into this one. Brennan asks, do you want to have? And it stuck with me as a great phrase because it shows a willingness to retcon and let the players do something they really want to do. I do it all the time when my players ask something like, am I still holding that item? Or is blank still in the room? Or is it nighttime yet? I ask my players, do you want that to be the case? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me if it's night or not right now, or if those NPCs came with them. But if it matters to the players, let them have it. And then the next phase is one I use a lot in games. Who feels like they have not been for a while? I use this in combat when the spotlight returns to the players. Rather than saying, who wants to go next, or what do you guys want to do, I ask, who feels like they've not been for a while, and it makes all the players more aware of each other. And it opens up the dialogue for any players who may want to go, but have been being polite. Every time I ask this, the more outgoing players who normally take the initiative and make plays look around the table and ask the quieter players, do you want to go? And then a quieter player usually says, you know what? I've not been for a while, so I will go. I think in Daggerheart, sometimes players don't even realise when they've not been for a while, so this is just useful to remind them of that. Phil from the future here, and I was editing this video and realised there's some phrases that I missed that I think are really important. And okay, I've never actually heard anyone use these phrases, but I want to recommend we start using them because I think they're fantastic. The first is, let's golden rule it. The golden rule is an official rule from the Daggerheart core rulebook that says that the most important rule of Daggerheart is to make the game your own. In other TTRPGs, I kind of see this like the rule of cool. But while the rule of cool is about ignoring the mechanics of the game to do something cool, the golden rule is about changing or massaging the mechanics of Daggerheart to make it suit your table more. Next time you hit a point at your table where a player asks if they can do something and it doesn't really gel well with the rules as written, but the whole table wants it to work like that, then golden rule it. Change the rules to increase player enjoyment. This also goes hand in hand with ruling over rules in Daggerheart. If you're ever unsure how a rule works in the moment, the GM can just make a ruling that aligns with the narrative. The book gives an example of the grappler, which is an item that allows you to pull things towards you, but it does not give much more detail than that. So if a player asks to say grapple a castle and pull the whole building toward them, rules as written, they kind of can, or there's nothing that says they can't, but obviously it makes no sense narratively or logically in any way, shape or form. So the GM would most probably make a ruling over the rule here. The other example of this the book gives is if a player does something that would obviously result in death, like jumping into an active volcano. The player would most probably not get a chance to make any death moves, because how could they? They're like deep in lava, taking an unlimited amount of damage non-stop. The ruling here would most probably be the player's dead without any death moves, even if it goes against the rules about death in the book. The golden rule and ruling over rules I think are so important for a GM and players to get their head around, because not only will it open up the narrative more when everyone knows they don't have to stick so strictly to the rules, but it also immediately shuts down anyone who wants to take advantage of the rules as written, to do something in bad faith, something against the narrative. Such as in D&D, the peasant railgun, where a player could take advantage of the rules to hire thousands of peasants, have them stand in a line, and have them pass an item to each other, building up momentum to do an insane amount of damage, all in one round of combat. Now, do not get me wrong, the peasant railgun does not really work when you look into it properly, and it's a hilarious thought exercise that maybe no one would ever actually try, but it is the most famous loophole of many loopholes where players try to break the game to do insane things against the narrative. But Daggerheart's ruling over rules and golden rule shut this kind of thing down before it even starts. Unless you and your players want to play like this, in which case the rules actually account for it too. So, genius. Everyone wins. Except rules lawyers. And the other phrase I wanted to add is, I think that is a golden opportunity. A lot of discourse I see online about Daggerheart is from people who do not realise that a GM can take a move when the players give them a golden opportunity. Sometimes players do something that would narratively have a consequence. The core rulebook uses the examples of a player moving too close to a waiting predator, or getting distracted while keeping an eye out for intruders. Normally, the GM would not get a move because the players have not rolled with fear, or been unsuccessful on a roll, or the GM has not spent a fear. But logically, the environment or an adversary would take a move. If a player character is sneaking past a sleeping dragon, then yells to the other party members that they are so sneaky, the dragon would probably wake up and attack. The players gave the GM a golden opportunity. I think that is a golden opportunity is a great phrase because it also stops players trying to find loopholes in the game, such as never rolling and therefore never giving the GM a chance to go or collects fear. But it is not just logic, it is narrative too. If a GM move will make the story more fun for everyone at the table, then it's a golden opportunity. An example of this is if a player character says the words, "It's quiet," too quiet. That's a golden opportunity for the players to get ambushed. Or next time a PC says, "What's the worst thing that can happen while doing something stupid?" That's a great time to make something really bad happen. And by saying, "I think that is a golden opportunity," you're reminding the players that this once again is not something you're doing just for the hell of it or out of spite. It is to make the game more fun and tell a better story. And I've been looking a lot at Reddit posts recently, most of them from people who are new with concerns about the game, but the golden rule and golden opportunity both kind of shut everything down. Most concerns about the GM not having enough power, or there being a player versus GM mentality, or just people taking advantage of the rules, but they really can't. So these phases are not just there to allow you to elevate the game and make it better for everyone, but also as safety guards to shut players down who are acting in bad faith, playing in a way that is counterproductive to the whole table having fun and telling an amazing story. If you can think of any other phases like these, let me know in the comments, and we'll go back to past fill to see if we can stick the landing of this video. And look, all these phases have one thing in common, and I actually did not plan for this. I grabbed all these phases at different points in different watches of these actual players, then realized that at least most of these phases lead into conversations with the players. They're either asking the players questions directly or lead into discovering something with the players. These phases are less, this is what happens, and more, let's find out what happens together. These are all highly collaborative phases that I think really lean on Daggerheart's narrative playstyle. Now, some of these phases are of course used in other TTRPGs, but a lot of them can really only be used in Daggerheart, which I think really shows just how unique this system is. And of course, these phases are great and all, but there are some fun physical tools I really recommend when playing Daggerheart, one of which is the fear tracker. So check out this video next to see the best and worst fear trackers on the internet. Thank you for watching.